I never thought love could feel like debt, but with him, it always did. He was charming, broke, and between jobs, and I told myself that was just a phase. I believed in him, or maybe I just wanted to believe that all the effort I put in actually meant something. I paid for rent, his phone, his car, even his gym membership. Every month, there was some new emergency he promised would sort itself out soon. He always said we were a team, like we were building something together. Then one night, out of nowhere, he looked me dead in the eye and said, "I think we should try being open." That's the moment I stopped crying and started collecting proof. When we first got together, it felt like everything was suddenly easier. Like I wasn't carrying the weight of the world all by myself anymore. I remember the first time he offered to pick up groceries. I'd forgotten my wallet at home, and he just said, "I got it this time." Nothing big, just a small thing, but I felt this weird mix of relief and pride. Like, maybe I didn't have to do everything alone anymore. He slipped into that role quietly, paying for our dinners, grabbing the gas when my card got declined. At first, I thought I was lucky, that he was generous, caring. He'd smile and shrug it off, like it was no deal. "You don't have to stress about this stuff," he'd say. And I believed him. I wanted to believe him. There was this tiny voice in the back of my mind saying, maybe it's normal. Maybe this is what people do when they care about each other. But looking back, it's clear I was just desperate to hold on to that feeling of partnership. I tried not to notice how often it was me who ended up short the next week, waiting for him to throw something back my way. He always said he'd pay me back when things got better, but somehow, things never did. One time, I was too embarrassed to ask for help, so I just didn't eat lunch for 2 days. I told myself it was fine, that I could manage. But then he showed up with that stupid pizza, grinning like it was some big surprise. "I figured you'd be starving," he said. I wanted to cry, but all I could do was laugh and say thanks. That's when I started feeling this awkward knot in my chest. Grateful, sure, but also uneasy. Like I was somehow supposed to owe him. It wasn't just about the money. It was the way he slid into my life, filling gaps I didn't even realize were there. Paying my bills when I missed a deadline, lending me his phone when mine died, even showing up with coffee when I stayed up too late working. It felt like care, like love. But sometimes I caught myself wondering who was really in control. One night, I needed to pay rent, and I didn't have the cash. I called him, biting my lip because I hated asking for anything. He answered on the first ring. "Don't stress. I got you," he said. When he dropped the money off, I could see it in his eyes, the way he watched me take it, like I was already on the hook. I took the envelope and tried not to squirm. I can't say I felt used back then. Mostly, I just felt safe. A part of me hated to admit how much I depended on him, because that wasn't who I was supposed to be. I was supposed to be independent, strong. But taking his help, his money, it was like a lifeline. I told myself it was temporary, that eventually I'd find my feet. Sometimes I wonder if he knew. If he saw how careful I was to swallow my pride and how much I was holding back, just to keep the peace. There were little signs I brushed off, like how he'd remind me about what he'd paid for last week or bring up some bill he covered months ago, as if I had forgotten. Looking back, those were cracks in the foundation. But at the time, I just smiled and nodded. It felt good to be taken care of, even if that care came with invisible strings. I convinced myself these were just quirks, that love came with these small debts and favors. I wanted to be the kind of person who could accept help and give it back, fair and square. But with him, it never balanced out. By the time I started noticing how much I was relying on him, it was too late. The favors piled up like unpaid tabs I couldn't clear. And every time I thought about pulling away, the thought of losing this safety net scared me too much. I guess what I'm saying is, those small acts of generosity weren't just kindness. They were the beginning of something else. A slow, quiet way he made me need him, even when I didn't want to. And worse, I let him. Maybe I thought love was supposed to feel like this, complicated and messy. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. I remember staring at my empty fridge, feeling stuck, and waiting for the moment he'd say, "I want my money back." But he never did. Not out loud. And that silence was heavier than any bill. It started small at first. He missed rent for a week, then a couple weeks, and I just covered it without saying much. I didn't want to admit it. Love had turned into direct deposit. But every time he got a new job, it felt like a fresh start, you know? Like maybe this time, things would be different. But they weren't. A few months in, he lost that job too. I remember sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the bills spread out on the floor and thinking, how did we get here? The fridge was practically empty except for the leftovers I'd been eating nonstop, and I was choosing between paying for electricity or splurging on groceries. He just didn't seem to see how bad it had gotten. Or maybe he did, but was stuck somewhere I couldn't reach. My friends started to notice. I'd get texts late at night, like, asterisk, are you okay? Is he really worth this? Asterisk, and I'd snap back. Look, he's trying. It's not like he's giving up. Because somewhere deep down, I convinced myself that sticking with him was some kind of proof of loyalty, like I was the only one who could keep him together, even if it was breaking me. I remember one night a few months after he lost the second job, I came home around midnight from a double shift at the restaurant. He wasn't asleep yet, sitting on the couch with his head in his hands. I dropped my keys in the bowl by the door, exhausted, and he looked up with those tired eyes, trying to smile but failing. Hey, I said quietly. Hey, he breathed out, voice hoarse. There was this pause that felt like it stretched forever. I wanted to ask what he was thinking, but I didn't. Instead, I sat next to him, trying to ignore the heaviness pressing down on my chest. I'll cover rent this month, I said, half to myself. He nodded, watching me like I was a stranger. That night, I fell asleep on the couch. It wasn't the first time. I was so drained. Sometimes, I'd just sit there with the weight of everything crushing me, pretending I could fix it all if I tried hard enough. My phone buzzed the next day with messages from friends again. Are you sure you're okay? Don't lose yourself. Sometimes love isn't enough. I deleted them without replying. I didn't want pity or lectures. I wanted to believe I was doing the right thing. That loyalty meant more than pride or logic. At work, I'd catch myself daydreaming about a different life, one where he had a steady job and we weren't constantly scrambling. But every time those thoughts crept in, I shoved them away. Because if I let myself think about leaving, what was left? The line between love and obligation blurred so much. I couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. Every time I covered another bill or picked up groceries, I told myself, asterisk, he's going to get better. He has to, asterisk. But watching him drift further away, barely holding on, I felt myself slipping too. One evening, he showed up late, smelling like beer and failure. I could see him trying to hold it together, but the frustration was there, simmering under the surface. I'm sorry, he slurred. I wanted to scream, to shake him awake and tell him to stop breaking us. Instead, I just nodded, swallowing the anger. I'll take care of things tomorrow, he promised. But tomorrow never came, and neither did the stability we both needed. I was stuck, caught between frustration and this stubborn loyalty that told me walking away would mean losing the last piece of love I thought I had. And honestly, I was scared. Scared of being alone, of realizing maybe I'd already lost it. It started with little things, like the new smell, this cologne he'd never used before. It was subtle, but I noticed it right away. Usually, he didn't care about that stuff, never bought fancy cologne or anything. But now, when he walked past me, there was this scent, sharp and unfamiliar, and I'd catch it lingering on his clothes days later. I asked once, is that new? Why now? He just shrugged, said, got it for work. And I nodded, didn't press. Then came the late nights. He told me he was pulling extra hours, working on some big project, trying to land a promotion. At first, I believed it. I mean, why wouldn't I? He always claimed to be tired in the mornings, dragging himself out of bed, but still made time for dinner a lot of nights. But slowly, I noticed the timeline didn't add up. One night, I stayed up late, pretending to scroll on my phone, but really just listening. The house was silent. He wasn't home. I checked the clock. Midnight. Then 1 a.m. 2. He finally walked in at almost 3. I didn't ask where he'd been. Something in me stopped short, held back. Maybe I didn't want to know. But that night, his eyes didn't have that usual tiredness. They seemed sharper, almost distant. Days later, I glanced at his bank app when he left his phone unattended. It was stupid, invasive, but the little voice in my head pushed me to look. His paycheck showed up like it always did. But the withdrawals, they didn't look familiar. There were a few cash pulls, late at night, from ATMs miles away from work. How was he spending cash like that if he was working late all the time? I shook my head and told myself, it's probably nothing. Maybe bills, or some emergency I didn't know about. But then came another weird thing. Messages. He left his phone out, screen lit up with texts from an unknown number. His name popped up sometimes, but the texts were always cryptic, flirty. I caught myself scrolling, heart racing, and shut it fast when he called from the other room. I wiped the screen clean, acting casual when he came back. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I lied. "Just tired, I guess." I wanted to believe it was just some harmless thing, a friend, work stuff. But these pieces didn't fit. His vague answers were starting to sound rehearsed. When I asked, "Where were you last Friday?" he'd say, "Work stuff." No details, no stories. Just flat answers that didn't sit right. I remember sitting on the couch, holding the mug of coffee we'd never finished, staring at him. He looked tired, but there was a flicker in his eye I hadn't seen before, like he was hiding or waiting for something. I felt a slow, prickly knot of doubt tightening in my stomach. I wanted to push it away. I kept telling myself, maybe he's just stressed, maybe it's nothing. But every time I caught that new scent on his jacket, or saw the phone light up from unknown numbers, that doubt grew. I started watching him more closely, not in a spy way, but like I was trying to catch a glimpse of who he really was now. When he kissed me goodbye in the morning, I hesitated. I wanted to mean it, wanted to trust him. But a small voice whispered, "Are you sure you know him anymore?" One night, after he left for another late shift, I sat in the dark, replaying every odd thing since the cologne. The silence in the apartment was deafening, like it was filled with everything I was missing. I flipped through my phone, drafting messages to friends, almost wanting to tell someone, anyone, what I suspected but couldn't confirm. I didn't want to be the person doubting someone I loved, but the evidence was piling up. And the worst part was that I was scared to bring it up. What if I was wrong? What if I pushed too hard and broke something beyond repair? So here I was, stuck, holding on to loyalty and love, but letting doubt creep in like a slow poison. I wanted to believe it was nothing. I needed to believe that. But lying awake in the silence, smelling that cologne on the pillow, the truth was hard to ignore. Maybe I should have asked directly. Maybe I should have trusted my gut sooner. But I didn't. I kept waiting for him to come clean, for the late nights to have a real explanation. I thought I was being patient. I thought it was just a rough patch. But the next time his phone buzzed with that same unknown number, the pit in my stomach flipped over, and I realized I was in deeper than I ever wanted to be. He sat across from me, his voice so casual it almost sounded rehearsed. "Look, I think we should try an open relationship. It's healthy, mature. People do it all the time, and it could be good for us." I just stared at him, that odd mix of shock and something colder settling in my chest. I didn't say anything right away. Instead, I smiled and said okay. Inside, I was boiling. Not just hurt or confused, rage. But I kept my face still, calm, like I was holding something dangerous in. I nodded like we were having an ordinary conversation, but my mind was already switching gears, flicking through every damn thing he'd done, every excuse he'd made, every late-night text he'd hidden from me. There was no way I was going to let this slide quietly. He gave me this little look, maybe expecting relief or gratitude. But I just sipped my coffee steady. "Okay." That was all I said. In that moment, I wasn't breaking, I was planning. I pulled out my phone and started saving everything. Every receipt that had his name on it, every strange payment request, every message that didn't make sense before. I figured if he wanted this so-called open thing, fine, I'd play his game with my own rules. He probably thought I was weak or stupid, but I was already collecting my evidence, building my silent case. The more mature he acted about it, the angrier I got. Like, how dare he pretend this was some enlightened decision when he was the one who'd been sneaking around, the one who needed permission to act like a child. The worst part? I kept the calm face that fooled even myself. I flicked through his messages, saved PayPal transfers, the ones he'd plastically begged for, whether it was for some sketchy investment or late-night dinners paid on my card. Every little thing felt like a tally next to the word liar scribbled inside my brain. I was collecting proof not to confront him. Not yet. This was about control, about not letting him spin this story without consequences. At one point, he said something dumb like, "We'll just tell each other everything, right?" And I forced a slow nod. My throat was tight, but I said, "Of course." The irony hit me like a punch, telling each other everything, when he clearly thought this was a free pass to do whatever he wanted without his messy feelings getting in the way. I remember looking at his face in that moment, the careless smile, and those eyes full of smug certainty, and feeling this cold surge, like finally someone else had the upper hand. Not me begging for explanations or justifying myself every time I found a new piece of evidence. No, now I was the one holding the deck. But underneath that, I felt something shift small and sharp, the aching part of me that still wanted to believe we could fix this, that he could actually be honest. It twisted tight, sneaking around the edges of my rage. I hated myself a little for that, hated how much I still cared even when everything was falling apart. When he left the room, I stayed put, checking every notification on my phone again. I had spreadsheets in my head now, places to keep each detail, the nights, the payments, the lies hidden in casual, "I'm just friends" texts. This wasn't just about catching him. It was about standing up to the chaos he'd tried to create. I told myself that maybe this was the line, the moment I decided I wasn't losing. Maybe I'd been naive before, but not anymore. I could play this smarter, colder. Keep every card close. Let him think he was winning while I was preparing. And just when I thought I had a grip on the plan, my phone buzzed with a message from him, simple and calm. Asterisk, "So, when do we start?" Asterisk, the silence in that moment felt heavier than anything. I thought it was over, but the quiet that followed said otherwise. I didn't want to look at the credit card statement again, but I had to. That sinking feeling had settled so deep, it was like my blood was turning into ice. Scrolling through the charges, I caught it. Subscriptions for things I never signed up for. Streaming sites, some weird dating app, even those monthly flower deliveries. None of it made sense because I wasn't the one interested. Then, as I dug deeper, it got worse. There were charges at jewelry stores, expensive restaurants I didn't even know existed. And then, gifts, boxes of perfume, that fancy watch I always thought was for me. But clearly, it wasn't. The name on every receipt wasn't his. It was her. I stared at the screen like it was a puzzle I was too scared to solve. How long had this been going on? How many times had I been fooled by his fake promises while he was buying things for someone else? Using my card, my money. Text messages started flooding back into my head. His excuses, those late nights when he said he was working. And all the times I asked if something was wrong, and he'd smile and say, "Nothing, babe. Just tired." I tried to feel something real. Anger. That was there for sure, sharp and burning. But more than that was this cold disgust, like I was a bystander in my own life. Like someone else had been running the show, making decisions I would never have agreed to. I opened the messages he'd left on my phone's reminders. Little notes about sending flowers, buying birthday gifts, meeting up. All meant for her. The thing is, I wasn't naive when it happened. Part of me wanted to see the receipts as just mistakes, hoping they'd disappear if I ignored them. But they didn't. They were right there in black and white. I felt completely hollow, like I was watching myself from outside, standing in our apartment, surrounded by the evidence of his betrayal. The worst part? It wasn't just cheating. It was the fact that every lie had a price tag. Every secret, a bill with my name on it. My money fueling a life I wasn't part of. I closed the laptop and sank back onto the couch, breathing heavy, trying not to break down. I hated him for it, sure, but I hated myself even more for letting it happen. For trusting so hard, I didn't see it tearing me apart. But then, strangely, the numbness shifted into something clearer, a cold, dangerous clarity. This wasn't just about heartbreak anymore. It was about what I was going to do with it. I didn't want to be the victim in this story, so I started planning. Carefully, meticulously. Not out of revenge that would cost me my own soul, but to make sure he understood the real cost of his betrayal. I pulled the card from my wallet and looked at it, this tiny rectangle that had been my silent witness. Then, without hesitation, I canceled it. He'd never get away with this. Not without paying. And I would be the one to make sure of that. I thought I'd feel some relief after that, but the quiet that followed was worse. Because somehow, I knew this was far from over. When I walked into her office, I was holding a folder fat with receipts, bank statements, screenshots, everything I'd been too afraid to look at properly until now. Sarah looked up from behind her desk, eyebrows raised, waiting for me to say something. Instead, I just sat down and dumped the folder in front of her, the weight of it solid and real between us. "We need to go through all this," I said, voice tight. "I want to know exactly what I'm facing." Sarah nodded, pushing her glasses up her nose, her usual calm professional face settling in. She flipped through the papers one by one while I tried to steady my breathing, catching the numbers I tried to ignore. 30 grand over 2 years, every payment traceable and account linked. All the gifts, the trips, the dinners. Everything. The way my name was listed, the dates that matched every excuse he ever gave. Turns out love isn't priceless. It's taxable. I kept asking questions, even though I already knew most of the answers. What does it mean? Does this make me a victim, or just someone who made terrible decisions? Sarah didn't flinch. It means you have proof, and you're not invisible here. It means you can fight this and maybe get something back. Even saying it out loud made me feel exposed. I'd buried the money spent like it was dirt on my hands, something to be ashamed of, but now it was evidence. It was power, if I could hold on to it. We started organizing everything, making spreadsheets, labeling categories, gifts, travel, cash advances. It was clinical almost, like building a case in a movie. At moments, my heart hammered so hard it felt like it might give away the shock beneath my focus. Fear still nagged the edges of my mind. What if this turned into a battle I wasn't ready for? What if everyone I trusted found out? But underneath that, there was this strange flicker, like I was standing up for myself for the first time. Sarah made a few calls while I sat there, taking slow breaths, trying not to let the walls close in. She arranged for an official audit, and she explained the steps, how to file claims, how to track every cent he couldn't explain. My head spun thinking about all the quiet nights I cried alone, wondering if this was it, the bottom of my luck. Now, it felt like I was climbing out, even if it was inch by inch. I remember one moment in particular. Sarah looked over her glasses and said, "You're giving yourself a chance here. This isn't just about money. It's about setting the record straight, for you." Her voice was soft but sure, and it hit me that underneath all this mess, I deserved that chance. And just like that, all the guilt I'd been carrying, the shame of being manipulated, of letting it go on so long, felt a little lighter. Maybe I wasn't just the broken piece anymore. But while the numbers added up and the plan was shaping, my mind couldn't stop spinning to the next step. The public exposure. The confrontation. I wasn't naive enough to think it would be easy or quick. But sitting there, with Sarah methodically making calls and me watching the pieces fall into place, I realized something I hadn't before. I was ready to fight, even if the fear wouldn't fully leave. I tucked the folder back into my bag, every paper a fragment of a truth I was finally prepared to own. I nodded at Sarah, and she smiled. Professional, but with something warmer beneath. We both knew this was calm before the storm. I thought it was relief, but the silence that followed said otherwise. He started bragging about being single and free all over his damn socials. It was like he wanted everyone to know how untouchable he was now. I caught it one late night. I wasn't even looking for it, but there it was, a post, a story, something obnoxiously proud. Just him, flaunting what he thought was his newfound freedom like a trophy. I snapped a screenshot before it vanished, then another, and another. He didn't think I noticed. But I wasn't done. I spent the next couple days digging through the shit he left behind, the debts he never paid, the bills he dodged, the warnings from utility companies that piled up like unread mail. I'm not proud of spying, but damn, I wanted him to feel what it's like to carry the weight of his choices. It wasn't about ruining him, not exactly. More about balance. An eye for an eye, in a way that actually mattered. When I saw he was applying for a new apartment, something clicked. This is where it would hit him. I found the landlord's email on a listing site, clearly public, and I put together a message with the screenshots of his single and free posts peppered with the proof of all those missed payments and outstanding debts. I didn't sugarcoat it. I just stated facts, showed the evidence. The landlord needed to know exactly who he was inviting in. I was nervous hitting send. Not because I was afraid of him finding out, more because part of me hesitated, wondering if I'd gone too far. But then that flicker of anger came back, the part of me still bruised by everything he'd done. I told myself it wasn't about revenge. It was just someone paying the price for the mess they left behind. A few hours later, I was scrolling Twitter when a notification popped up. His account was already silent since the application deadline. I stared at my phone, heart beating slightly too fast. Did he know? Was he panicking? I felt a strange satisfaction, a quiet victory. He wanted freedom. I just made sure he could afford it. But then the anxiety crept in. What if he found a way around it? What if this was just the beginning of something worse? I kept replaying those moments. The smile he gave me when I confronted him earlier in the year, the way he twisted my words. Somewhere in that smirk, I saw a threat buried beneath the charm. I couldn't shake off the feeling that this wasn't over for him or for me. Still, a small part of me was relieved. For once, it wasn't me left holding the pieces. I watched the days crawl by, waiting for any sign of what would come next. Did he lose the apartment? Did this push him to hit rock bottom, or did he just shrug and move on like nothing happened? I told myself I'd done what I had to do. No violence, no screaming matches, just consequences. And maybe that was enough. But there was a hollow space where relief should have been. The silence that answered back was different this time. Not peace exactly. Something else, something heavier. I put my phone down and ran my hands through my hair. I thought it was over. But the quiet felt wrong. Like waiting for a storm that was still on its way. He stormed in like a storm, slamming the door so hard the frame shook. I was sitting at the kitchen table, the whole folder spread out between my hands, quiet like I always am when I'm trying not to lose it. He stood there, chest heaving, eyes wild with something I wish I'd never seen in him, pure fury. "You think you can just ruin my life?" he spat, voice low but breaking. "You're killing me." I looked up at him, steady, calm, like I could just snap all this anger into silence with a look. "I didn't ruin shit," I said. "You did." He took a step closer, jaw clenched, like words were clawing at his throat. There was a long pause where I wasn't sure if he was going to yell or break down. Then he pointed at the folder with this bitter laugh. "What's that?" "Your proof." I nodded, lifting it just so he could see the label on the front, reimbursement. "You really kept all this? Every bill, every little thing you've been putting on me?" I didn't answer. Didn't need to. The folder told the story better than I ever could. Receipts from doctor's visits, therapy sessions, even the quiet little things he never noticed, the meds I paid for, the missed workdays, the nights I sat alone because he was lost somewhere in his own mess. He looked at it, tears beginning to gather, shoulders shaking with this helpless anger. For once, he had nothing left to say, except my name on every bill. The silence stretched, thick with everything we weren't saying. It was strange, having the power shift like this, from him always cornering me, shouting, blaming, threatening, to me holding this cold, undeniable proof that I'd been drowning alone all along. "I'm done," I said finally, voice low. "I'm done paying for your mistakes." He laughed again, but it was hollow. "You think you're free after this?" I wasn't sure if he was asking or telling. Either way, he was wrong. I already was free. This folder was my last chain, and I was ready to break it. But even with the relief of finally standing up like this, there was a quiet sadness in my chest I couldn't shake. Because I knew how much we both lost, how much I lost, trying to save him, and how much he'd lost, blinded by his own rage. He looked away then, swallowing hard. "You're making it worse," he said. "Maybe I am." That was the moment I realized I wasn't just confronting him. I was confronting everything we'd become. The bitterness, the blame, the broken pieces scattered between us. And yet, even as the anger hung heavy in the air, I couldn't help but feel this strange, painful kind of relief. Like maybe, finally, there was a chance to breathe, to let go. But maybe some things don't heal. Maybe some fights never really end. Because when he looked back at me, eyes dark and distant, I knew the silence wasn't over. It was just waiting to explode again. He sent me a message out of the blue. Something that looked like an apology at first. I remember staring at the screen because, honestly, the words sounded almost convincing. He said he was sorry for everything, that he'd been a mess and didn't mean to hurt me. Typical stuff. But he did this little twist at the end, trying to make me feel responsible, like I was the one who broke everything. I almost typed back. Almost. But no. I could feel it clear as day, the guilt trip dangling right there. It wasn't an apology, it was a trap. I took a breath, pushed the phone aside for a moment. It was like all the noise inside me quieted down. I realized how tired I was of playing his game. I'd spent so long trying to decipher every word, looking for the truth. But there wasn't going to be any truth from him, not this time. So I blocked him, just like that. No warnings, no explanations. His messages stopped instantly, and for the first time in months, I felt something light settle where the weight had been. It was calm. Not perfect peace, no, but calm. Like, this storm is over, kind of calm. After that, I went online and looked up our shared account. We had opened it together early on, thinking we were building something, like a couple. It felt like our lives were mixed in there, bills, savings, the little stashes for trips we never took. And now, it felt wrong. Toxic, even. Like every dollar in there was a reminder of what he stole from me. Not money, but calm, stability. I transferred all the money out. I did it slowly, because I was scared he might catch on or get angry. But I kept it quiet. No notifications. No alerts that he could grab. I didn't even tell a single friend. I wanted that part to be mine, to be my choice. Watching the numbers shrink in that account was strange. Like reclaiming pieces of myself that I'd lost, one wire transfer at a time. Then I closed it. The account just disappeared, and with it, a headache I didn't realize I'd been carrying. No strings, no ties, no more hours. I remember sitting back in my chair after that. The usual noise outside felt distant, muted almost. I was in my apartment, alone, and nothing was pulling at me from outside. The silence was peaceful, not the heavy kind that screams something's wrong, but the calm where you catch your breath without feeling like you owe anything to anyone. There was this quiet strength growing inside me. Not the fiery kind that's loud and angry. It was softer, steadier. Like knowing you've built a wall around yourself, not to trap anyone, but to protect the only thing that matters now, your peace. It's weird, but I felt gratitude too. Gratitude that I could do this for myself. Somewhere in all the chaos, that felt like a small victory. The best thing I ever bought wasn't a fancy phone or some expensive trip. It was my own peace. And that wasn't even about money. It was about saying no enough times to finally mean it. Later that night, I double-checked that he was really gone from my phone. No messages, no missed calls, just emptiness where the noise used to be. My heart didn't race. There wasn't a moment of doubt. I knew, deep down, I wasn't going to let that door open again, no matter what words might come spilling out in the future. But the silence? It wasn't comfortable. It was too heavy, too vast. Like the space he left wasn't just empty. It was a reminder of everything broken between us. I still wasn't sure if peace meant forgetting all of it or just living with the scars. I thought maybe I had found my ending, but the quiet that settled in the room told me it was more complicated than that. I'm sitting here now, in my new apartment. It's quiet, the kind of calm that sneaks up on you when everything you thought you needed just isn't there anymore. The sunlight's coming through the windows, casting long shadows on the floor, and I can hear the neighbor's dog barking far off, but inside it's like the noise is muffled, like I'm in this bubble I finally earned. Months after all that storm, I'm finally debt-free, living on my own terms. I even got that promotion I never thought I'd see coming. It feels different. Good different. I remember thinking back, then that love was supposed to be this exchange, like you had to keep giving, keep proving yourself, keep paying some price for it. He made sure I knew the cost, every time. Like affection was earned with gold coins, or favors, or absolution. That was wrong of me to believe. It wasn't love. It was something else, something I thought was love because it was all I knew. Now, I'm learning what respect looks like, for myself first. The boundaries I set today aren't walls. They're lines I refuse to cross again with anyone. I've surprised myself, how fiercely protective I've become of my own peace. Healing hasn't been perfect. It's messy and rubbish sometimes. But I'm here, and that's what counts. I went back and looked at my old bank statements just last week. Funny thing, seeing all those payments I made, not just money, but the mental energy and time. It hit me then. He taught me the cost of loving the wrong person and the value of never paying twice. It's not about revenge, it's about self-respect, not chasing someone who treats love like a transaction. I don't know that anymore. That night when I finally changed the locks, I felt lighter than I had since any of this started. It was symbolic, sure, but real. I wasn't just shutting him out. I was letting myself in. I remember unlocking the door the first time by myself, knowing I was the one who held the key now. It felt like I was taking control of a story that had spun wildly out of my hands. Sometimes, I still catch myself wondering what if. Not like I want him back, I don't. But just what if I'd known then what I know now? Maybe I'd have saved a piece of myself I gave away too quickly. Or maybe I needed to lose it to find it again. Part of me hates that I had to learn this lesson the hard way, but another part, I guess it's hopeful, knows I'll never fall for someone who makes me pay for love again. I don't have any grand gesture of triumph here. No dramatic speech or great escape. Just this quiet space that's mine. I'm building on it every day, little by little. It's not flashy or fast, but it's steady. And it's honest. That might be enough. Tonight, I'm going to cook dinner in this kitchen alone, and it won't feel lonely. I'm going to sit at this table and tell myself the truth, that I'm stronger, that I'm worthy, that I'm done trying to prove anything to anyone else. I'm done carrying someone else's debts. I'm pretty sure that's what real love feels like. It's peace, not a constant transaction, not a bill I have to settle every time I want to be seen or heard. He doesn't get any more payments from me. I'm finally collecting on myself. And maybe that's the best kind of payoff there is.